send us an email at info@jasminesorus.com. Again, that email is info@jasminesorus.com. Again, if you have any questions throughout the event, please press *3 on your keypad. And also, if you would like to receive or start receiving campaign updates from our campaign team, please feel free to press *6 on your keypad to subscribe. I know that there may be some folks tuning in on various social media outlets, so feel free to drop your questions in the comments there, and we will try our best to capture your questions there as well. I am now going to turn it over to Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett.
Good evening, Texas. It's Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett out of Dallas and Tarrant counties. And it is so nice to speak with you this evening. We may not see one another right now, but I want you to know that I do see you. I've traveled our state, meeting with so many of you, and tonight is another opportunity to get answers to your burning questions from the candidate herself. Before we get into my campaign to represent our great state in the United States Senate, let's talk about what's going on right now. I mean, today, in a large swath of our state, we are blanketed by snow and ice, something us Texans aren't particularly used to. I want to ensure that you have the resources, both physical and informational, to stay safe and warm as the temperatures remain low. Please visit jcfortx.com/weather. That's JC for Texas, but it's jc4tx.com/weather for the latest information and share it with your loved ones. That's, again, going to be a great resource. Hopefully your local elected officials are also sharing resources with you, as well as I would encourage each of you to make sure that you are staying in touch with any of your nonprofits that normally step up in moments like this. We will continue to share this information throughout tonight's call, as well as on my social media platforms. And on social media, we are Jasmine for Us on every single platform. So if you're on the phone, just know we are streaming live on every platform that allows for it right now. And that is at Jasmine for Us. To ask a question tonight, please press *3 at any time, and a member of the Texas Tough team will gather your question. Now, a little bit about me. If we haven't met, I'm Jasmine Crockett, currently serving as a Congresswoman for Texas' 30th Congressional District in Dallas and Tarrant counties. I'm not new to this, but I am true to this. I got my start in Houston for law school. And while some people are still trying to guess my age, I have been licensed for about 20 years now to practice law. After I graduated from law school, I went to East Texas, where I served as a public defender in Texarkana. And the office that I worked in was the Bowie County Public Defender's Office. I then went on to serve as the Bowie County Democratic Party chair. I proudly served as House District 100's state representative in Austin at the state capitol before answering the call, literally, from my predecessor to take the fight to the federal level. I was a national co-chair for the Harris-Walz campaign in 2024 and have been uplifting the voices of Texans across our nation for over 3 years now as a federal official. All in all, my entire career, I've fought the system. And frankly, the system has been fighting me back. But enough about me. We are all gathered here tonight to engage in an impactful discussion, and I look forward to getting you the answers you deserve. There's been a lot going on Capitol Hill, which may be hard to believe, given that this is the most unproductive Congress in recent history. And that's saying a lot, because the last Congress was the most unproductive Congress. In fact, if I'm going to be specific, there are 435 members of the House, 100 members of the U.S. Senate. And while there is one party that has been in control for the last year, they have passed a total of 40 bills. 40. As of last year. That's how many got passed. And 2 of them got vetoed. That's how unproductive we've been. But I can go on and on and on about that, so we can talk about that later. Right now, we're looking at yet another government shutdown under the Trump administration. So I am on what they call a recess week. We don't necessarily get vacation, but they say we get recesses, but that's not really what it feels like. Some people call it recess. Other people call it district work week. Republicans call it recess. Democrats call it district work week. So we are out this week on the House side. And all of the appropriations bills did pass. We have a total of 12 appropriations bills. They did all pass the House, but they also have to pass the Senate. The very last bill that was put on the floor, the very last appropriation that I had to deal with was DHS funding. And that is where the ICE funding is. And it narrowly passed. It passed by one vote. With that being, well, it didn't pass by one vote. Let me say it this way. There were 7 Democrats that crossed over. And basically, it would have failed by one vote. Anyway, long story short, it passed. It went to the Senate, and we are waiting to see what the Senate is going to do because only the House is currently out. The Senate is in. The deadline to actually fund the government is January 31st. And as of now, through both chambers, only 6 of the 12 appropriations have passed. So we will see what happens. We're waiting on the Senate, and I may have to go back to DC prematurely, and that's perfectly fine. So basically, I'm on call. That's just kind of one of the things that comes with being in federal government, especially this federal government. All right. We are, and the reports allegedly are that the Senate is not going to pass the DHS funding bill, but we will see. So that y'all understand, our TSA workers, they're the ones that actually, the people that you probably see the most that are impacted by the full DHS appropriation would be TSA and ICE. Y'all probably don't see the other people very often. Those are like the 2 most common kind of folk that y'all probably see under that funding bill. Let me see what else. All right. And I know y'all are gonna ask me ICE questions, so I'm not even gonna read it because I already know y'all gonna ask me ICE questions, and it's all good. I want to answer those questions. Now I want to hear from y'all, so I am going to turn it back over to my Deputy Chief of Staff, Kendall Locke, to moderate the Q&A portion. Again, if you have any questions, it's *3 on your keypad. To stay connected with our Texas Tough team, please hit *6 to sign up for updates.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Before we get into questions, the Congresswoman has already mentioned it, but just want to be sure that if you are on social media, that you can stay connected with our campaign, see all the amazing things we're doing, and as we're traveling the state. So our handle on all social platforms is Jasmine for Us. That's Jasmine FORUS. So of course, we'd love for you to give us a follow on your favorite social media platform. Also, if you haven't had an opportunity to visit our campaign website, encouraging you to do that as well. That website is www.jasmineforus.com, and on there you can find volunteer opportunities, sign up to volunteer, and learn more about the Congresswoman. Again, if you have a question, reminding you to press *3 on your keypad so that we're able to collect that and to sign up for campaign updates. Press *6 so we can grab your email and add you to our database. Congresswoman, our first question is coming from San Antonio. It's coming from, and I hope I pronounced your name correctly, but Darian. Darian in San Antonio, he asked, what is the Congresswoman's plan to ensure the primary and general elections go without interference?
Ooh, this is a very good question. So one of the things that I think is really important for us to do is to make sure that we not only get people out to vote, but that we protect the vote. So I've been encouraging people to sign up, even with our campaign, to get trained on what it looks like to actually watch and be what we call like a poll watcher. We do plan to hopefully get some lawyers involved as well. We recently received the endorsement of Ms. Kennebars. What are you doing? Mexican American Bar Association. And so it is my hope that I can get them, along with a few other bar associations, to decide that they're going to be kind of on the front lines of watching. My biggest concern right now, I don't know how many of you have seen the reports that basically Pam Bondi sent a letter as it relates to ICE's presence in Minneapolis, and basically said, hey, here's a ransom note. If you decide that you want ICE out, then all you have to do is give over your voter rolls. For us in Texas, what's really scary is that they just gave them over. So I am encouraging each and every one of you, if you are listening right now, doesn't matter what state you're listening in from, because the president is very concerned that he's going to lose. So that's why we have the redistricting scheme. That's why they're trying to get the voter rolls. That is why, in my opinion, he's trying to incite a civil war while also trying to figure out how he's going to have World War III pop off. So I would encourage you, even if you're somebody that's like, hey, I show up, I vote every single election, nothing's going to happen to my voter registration, please, please, please go ahead and check your voter registration and make sure that it is good to go. We know that the last day to register to vote, specifically in Texas for our primary, is going to be February 2nd. That date is quickly approaching. So please check your status, confirm your status. And then also it's going to be really important for us to educate folk on what's happening. Right now in Dallas County, one of the things that they decided to do, and I fully anticipate we're going to see more of this throughout kind of the state of Texas, is the Republican Party knows that our law says whatever one party primary has to do, the other one has to do. So in a large county like Dallas, the bluest county that we have in the state, what they decided to do is say that everyone has to vote at their polling location on election day. So they are trying to confuse voters and turn them off in hopes of minimizing our turnout. It is going to be really important for people to vote early, because you can vote anywhere in the county. As it relates to this specific race, because it is a statewide race, let's say you're like, oh man, I forgot, I got busy, I ended up on a work trip and now I'm in Austin, but I really live in Dallas. You can vote for every statewide race, no matter where you are. It will preclude you from being able to vote for your district specific races. But if it's say like the last day and you're like, I gotta vote, that is an option. Make sure you tell them you understand that you can only vote in the statewides. So for us, it's going to be about education. It's going to be about protection. And, you know, it may end up being about litigation as well, which I did engage in litigation as it relates to the 2021 maps. And so with me being a plaintiff as it relates to that redistricting fight, when we came upon this redistricting fight, which was kind of born out of the last one, I was a plaintiff and I actually did testify in El Paso in front of that 3-judge panel. And I didn't know which way it was going to go, but I did feel like I had done what I needed to do as someone who was trained by election law lawyers and redistricting lawyers before those maps came on the floor, so that I can make a good record. And then I was able to then go and testify, not only from the perspective of a state representative who participated in the redistricting process, but also as a sitting member of Congress who has very strong opinions about what maps should look like and has worked on legislation as relates to maps. So I know that was a lot, but there's a lot about voting. So the one thing that I want everyone to take away from today is that you really need to check your status no matter what state you're in, because they are absolutely trying to make it to where there is going to be a continual lack of a check on this administration. And we have to have people that are willing to do what their oath requires them to do, which is to follow the Constitution. And right now we don't have that.
Thanks, Congresswoman. Our next question comes from Austin. It's Kathleen. She asked, what is the Congresswoman going to do to ensure that the Constitution is being preserved?
All right, this is such a complicated question. So let me tell you a couple of things. Right now, our Constitution and our laws are only as good as the people in office, because ultimately what has become clear is that if people don't want to follow them, then we end up looking like, wait a minute, what happened? So a couple of things. The only branch that is not completely broken, it's still quite broken right now, is the judiciary branch. So number one, working with those organizations that are bringing litigation is really important. Finding space where we can sue, which is not a ton of space for us as sitting members of Congress, especially in the minority. One of the really important parts about the Democrats taking control is that the Speaker of the House or the leader of the Senate can actually go ahead and start some of that litigation on behalf of, say, the body, if there are violations of, say, what's going on with the body, right? And ultimately, the question, though, becomes like, all right, so what happens when you win in court and then they just ignore the court order? The question is, are we really going to have judges that are ready to hold people accountable and hold them in contempt? And I was reading an article today that talked about, was it Bovina? It was somebody from DHS. It was the head of ICE. It was the head of ICE, where there's a judge that is talking about holding the head of ICE in contempt. There's been all these talks about it, but it's not been done. And that is an interesting constitutional crisis that we've never seen, not in our lifetime, where it's a matter of a judge saying, this is the law, you guys are violating it, now stop it. And then they say, we're not going to stop it. And then a judge have to say, well, you're in contempt. Are you ready to go to jail? So, things are being pushed to the limit. And, the good thing about a contempt action as it relates to a federal judge is that Trump ain't gonna be able to get them out. It's different, right? Especially if they just it's going to be a little interesting on what it would look like to try to get them out. So, we're trying to explore all these things that we never had to explore before. But I do think as a United States Senator, it is important, number one, when we start to talk about the Constitution, to, number one, just get the numbers. We just need the numbers. And that's why the Texas seat is so important. We've got to get to the majority. And, the court has held the line when it came to birthright citizenship and saying, no, you can't do that. We know that when it came down to the War Powers Resolution, making it clear that the president did not have the constitutional authority, because that resides with Congress, to go into Venezuela, it is important that we have those numbers. We know that there was a preliminary vote and there were Republicans that flipped. And so the numbers were there so that it could get passed in the Senate. And ultimately, unfortunately, he picked up a phone, called a few of them, picked them off. And next thing you know, J.D. Vance came in and cast the tiebreaker to allow him to continue on. So this is why these numbers are so very important. This has to be bigger than ambition. It has to be bigger than any single person. It has to be about our democracy as a whole. And so, I've told people over and over, if we had a Democratic senator, I wouldn't be running. But this is about how do we get those numbers? And Texas is in a really good place to hopefully get the numbers so that we can preserve what is left of the Constitution, because they are violating it every single day. And then once we have the numbers, it can't just be that we get complacent. I think that we have to be committed to saying, you know what, we are going to fortify the Constitution and our democracy. So to me, that looks like we need to go ahead and enact legislation that is completely contradictory to the interpretation that the Supreme Court has made. The Supreme Court has interpreted that the president has immunity. The courts are there to interpret laws that are written by the legislative branch. And so if you make it clear, then we're in a better space. That's number one. Number two, when we look at the unconstitutional lines that have been drawn as it relates to gerrymandering, again, this comes down to a matter of passing legislation through both chambers and getting it signed into law. Now, some of you may say, now listen, Congresswoman, he's still the president. So is he going to sign some stuff that's going to hurt him? No, I'm not naive in that way. But this is the real check on power, right? The Senate is the only body that actually has the ability to exercise oversight specifically over the Supreme Court. And so, hopefully we can start bringing in some of these justices. We can start talking about why it is that they have not recused themselves from cases where there was absolutely a conflict. We can start to actually say we need a code of ethics because they are the only court in the land that does not have a code of ethics that they have to abide by. So I think that there are things that we can do to hold the line and stop the bleeding, but only if we get the numbers. But the reality is that so long as he is still the president, we are still going to have problems as it relates to actually getting legislation that would be beneficial for our democracy signed into law.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Our next question comes from Patricia in Dale, which is Caldwell County. She asked, if the Democrats take over the midterms, is there any way to rescind the Big Beautiful Bill? And how long does the bill stay in effect?
Yes. Okay. So there's a lot of different things in the Big Beautiful Bill. The one thing that I can tell you is that the tax cuts that were given to the one percenters, they did make those tax cuts permanent in that bill. When he was in office before, they passed this package, and ultimately those tax cuts were set to expire in 2026. And unfortunately, we didn't win. So they had to put something else back in place, and they decided to make it permanent. Now, we can go about undoing what he's done. We can rewrite. The problem is that, again, he's got to sign off on it. So the only way that we can avoid the president having to sign off on something, which is how we got the Epstein files, kind of. Clearly, we ain't got nothing. But work with me. If you have a veto-proof majority in both the House and the Senate, then it doesn't matter because basically it's going to become law, right? So that means 2/3 of each chamber. And so when it came down to the Democrats leading with Thomas Massey, let me be clear, because it was Ro Khanna and Thomas Massey that led on that particular issue. It was a struggle to get the signatures. They didn't swear in my colleague for almost 50 days because they wanted to avoid this. They shut the House down, and we didn't do any business because they did not want to get the signatures. Once we got the signatures, none of them really wanted to be on record as voting against it, right? So everybody voted for it. So veto proof out of the House. In the Senate, they passed it, I think, under unanimous consent. And so basically, so long as nobody objects, they didn't take an actual hard vote, it's more like, hey, we've got a unanimous consent. Does anybody object? If nobody objects, then it goes through and it's read as if it's a unanimous situation because there were no objections. So therefore, it was going to become law no matter what. So he was like, all right, well, let me go ahead and sign this. I'm signing because I want to get after them. I don't see the things that would put us in our best position getting the votes, which means rolling back those tax cuts, getting the votes that are necessary while he is still the president, because we would still need a supermajority to actually get that done. Now, do I believe that we can get it done? I do. Do I believe that it's not even a matter of Democrats, but it's about aggressive Democrats that are listen, they came in here, they ran shop over us, they did all kinds of craziness. We've got to be as aggressive when it comes down to protecting the very people it is that we say that we have signed up to serve, right? So because of the big ugly bill, we know $1 trillion was pulled out of Medicaid and Medicare. pulling that money out, it made everybody else's premiums go up, because the way that insurance works is that everybody got to pay in, right? And then it's a matter of hopefully you don't have to pull down. So that's why when insurance companies are determining how much they're going to charge somebody, they basically are testing the waters. Like, oh, are you young? Are you healthy? Cool. All right. Well, and you don't smoke. All right. Well, chances of you having to pull down are kind of slim. So we'll let you pay less money. The reality is that we needed that money in that ecosystem. But instead, they decided to put it into the pockets of the 1%ers. And the reality is that they put it into the pockets of the 1%ers. 1 trillion is a lot, y'all. Like, the biggest thing in our budget is Medicaid and Medicare. I mean, like, it's a lot. And so right now, you know, we also are dealing with the tax subsidies as it relates to the Affordable Care Act. Now, we were also able to get that on the House floor through, why am I blanking? We were also able to get that on the floor and ultimately pass it off the floor. And there's been no movement so far out of the Senate. And that's just for a 3-year subsidy to help those on the Affordable Care Act. But most of the ugly things that are taking place in the big ugly bill, they actually will not take place until after the midterms. That's when they're really set to go into effect. But if you know anything about your local nonprofits, your hospitals, or whomever, they typically aren't doing their budgets at the end of the year. They typically do their budgets close to the beginning of the year. So one of the reasons that you've seen like certain prices going up, or you've seen, you know, in Texas, we've got a record number of rural hospitals that are shutting down, is because they're making their projections for their budget about how much of a shortfall they're going to have. So some of the actual impact is already hitting us. So again, like I'm a terrible politician to the extent that like, I'm not really good with not being honest. And the honest thing is that I don't see Donald Trump deciding that he's going to sign off on undoing what he just did for his top donors and friends and his own family.
Thanks, Congresswoman. Before we go to our next question, just want to remind folks that if you would like to ask a question, that you are able to do so. Press *3 on your keypad, and you will be placed in line so that we can capture the question. If you would like to sign up for campaign updates, that's something that you can do as well by pressing *6 on your keypad, and that will put you in the queue for us to be able to add you to our database. Also, I know that there's a few folks that may have new folks that may have joined us. So wanted to be sure that I throw out our social media handles. So if you're on social media, you can stay tapped in with the Congresswoman campaign by our handle. Our handle is at Jasmine SORUS. That's on all social media platforms. Again, at Jasmine SORUS. And you can stay connected with us there. Also, I wanted to be sure to mention, just in case any folks happen to drop off before we end, mention a couple of important dates. On Monday, February the 2nd, that is voter registration deadline. There will be some more information given about that a little or toward the end of the call. But Monday, February 2nd is the deadline for voter registration. Tuesday, February the 17th, that is the start of early voting. And so early voting will go Tuesday, February 17th through Friday, February the 25th. And to answer any of your questions, yes, Saturday the 21st as well as Sunday the 22nd. Those will be voting days across the state. And also want to be sure that you know that Tuesday, March 3rd is the primary election day. So wanted to be sure to throw out those dates. We will now go to our next question. Congresswoman, this question comes from Renee in El Paso. That question is, how will the Congresswoman address school voucher and indoctrination in schools?
Yeah, okay. So this is such a great question, specifically for us here in Texas, as I'm sure most of you that are listening are well aware. The state house and the state senate were in a fight, not just this session, but actually for the last 2 sessions over the voucher scam that Greg Abbott was running. And he was running it to the extent that Republicans who understood that this would be bad for their communities in their rural areas decided that they were going to vote against it. So it didn't get passed in the session prior to this most recent one. And so when it didn't pass, he then spent money because in the state of Texas, we have no campaign finance limits. And so he spent millions of dollars to go after these folk to basically get enough people into submission to be able to pass his voucher scam. So now hard-earned Texas taxpayer dollars will be taken out of our public schools that have already been underfunded and under-resourced, whether we're talking about the teachers, whether we're talking about the fact that they don't have the mental health providers that they need, that they don't have the nurses that they need, that they don't have a lot of the things that they need. Sometimes the books that they need just don't have enough. They're going to go ahead and take even more away from our public schools and starve them more so that people who want to send their kids to private schools, no matter what amount of money they make, so even if you are a billionaire, you can afford to send your kid to private school, and you have been affording to send your kid to private school, those public dollars are going to be pulled out and put into a private school of their choice. And I mentioned choice because private schools are not required to take anybody. They can take whoever they want to or reject whoever they want to, unlike our public schools, which is yet another reason public dollars should stay maybe in the public, right? But instead, we know that the Republicans are always about putting dollars into the pockets of their friends. And frankly, they only look out for one class of people. Because that is more of a state issue, on the federal level, for me, my focus is the Department of Education, kind of generally speaking. The Department of Education, unfortunately, under Secretary WWE, she's been instructed to shut it down. So what that means is a couple of things. Number one, it's illegal to shut it down. So what they are trying to do is make it bare bones and minimize its effectiveness. The thing that matters most when we start to talk about, say, our elementary schools, as we're talking about the voucher scam and that kind of stuff, is when we start to talk about the Civil Rights Division. They have gutted the Civil Rights Division from the Department of Education. So if you have a special needs child who needs some help with something, it typically is that Civil Rights Division that deals in that space. You may not get what you need for your child at all because there's no one that's there. So I do want to be clear that civil rights is bigger than just Black folk. It goes a lot deeper than that. It is not just color. It also deals with our uniquely abled folk. And in this case, dealing with our kiddos. So that's one of the biggest kind of hurdles that we have, as well as I'm sure many of you have filled out a FAFSA at some point in time in your life, whether you were filling that out for your child or yourself. They are now limiting access to dollars for education. And so this is obviously, again, still on the federal level. We're going to deal with kind of higher level stuff for the vast majority of the time. So they downgraded a number of degrees. The nursing degree for sure has been downgraded as a non-professional degree. And by that, that limits how much money you have access to be able to get that degree. They did the same thing with social work, and there's like a long list of them. So not only are they taking away some of our most important divisions of this department, but in addition to that, they are further limiting how far certain people can go as it relates to their careers, because basically it's going to come down to, can you privately fund yourself to get certain degrees? And frankly, I'm interested to see what this does with the pay scale. Part of me thinks that it won't adjust the pay scale because there's still a great need for so many social workers as well as nurses, especially nurses. We've had this insane need for nurses, and now they're going to make it even more difficult for our nurses to get what they need. Let's see, what else do I have here? Also, a number of things that we've not dealt with a ton. This is actually kind of dovetailing both the last question and this one, is in the big ugly bill. They took away not only healthcare, but they took away SNAP benefits. And that's actually going to impact the amount of dollars that go to our schools as well. For our kiddos that are on a reduced lunch or free lunch, there's going to be an impact there as well. And so the reason I bring that up is because I absolutely believe that we have to make sure that our kids are getting nutritious foods as they are growing. That is the only way to make sure that we're maximizing those little brains and their development. And so we're going to have to deal with that too. And I think because the healthcare piece has been so important, that this part has not really been highlighted. Anything else? Reversing the billions that have been cut. Yes. Let me make this point as well. As it relates to schools and things that we can do on the federal level that we typically do. There's also this issue as it relates to student loans. Now, people can say what they want to say about the prior administration, but people was getting student loan relief. And so I do think that it is important for us to do whatever we can to make sure that this new stance that the Department of Education has on student loans about going after people and deciding that they're going to put collection notices on them and that kind of stuff, as we still have relief options, minimizing relief options for those maybe that are out of work, especially at a time like this, when we've already lost 1.1 million jobs since he's been in office. I think it is so important. I think it's more crucial now than ever to really get some support around that. Again, it's always interesting when I'm trying to think about, like, yes, we can stop the bleeding on certain stuff, but what things can we actually do that he potentially would like sign into law? And because they seemingly are against anybody that needs assistance, whether it's food assistance, whether it's healthcare assistance, whether it's education assistance, it is always still so very difficult for me to imagine. Now, I will say that the child tax credit is one of those things that the Republicans found to be very, very popular. So we passed a child tax credit last session. It was not what the Democrats had done before. It was not as robust. And so we will see, but like they really wanted to take credit. And so I will say that no matter where you are, it's so important to make those phone calls and call in, because it kind of reverses course every once in a while, not all the time. But if Trump believes that that's a winning issue for him, then he reverses course. Like, we see what they're doing right now with ICE. They're trying to get us to quote unquote calm down. So they're like, oh, Bovino's out, right? Yay. Like, we should all calm down now. Like, no, we're not falling for that, right? But I will say that that is one of those things that I have personally witnessed, is that if he really feels like an issue is tanking him because he pays attention to polls, then he will reverse course. So it is important that we continue to protest and that we continue to reach out, because those Republicans, when they are afraid that they're about to lose, they call the White House and they tell them, this is what we're hearing. So don't think, oh, I live in a Republican district, they're never going to listen to me. No, that's actually the people we need you calling more than anybody. Don't call the Democrat in the neighboring districts, because when we look you up, or when the staff looks you up, they're like, well, this person doesn't live in the district, right? So like, it's just like being a U.S. senator. If somebody calling from, say, Oregon down to Texas trying to tell the U.S. senator what to do, I don't know that the senator is going to get that note, right? But if it's like a Texan calling in, then they absolutely keep count of like what's going on. So make sure that y'all are staying engaged in that. And then finally, there were so many great programs that just kind of came out of COVID and under the leadership of Nancy Pelosi. And I think that childcare side of things, we've got to deal with it, and we've got to deal with pre-K and making sure that universal pre-K is a reality, because that's another one of those things that kind of travels outside of, because it's that early education. So again, though, do I think that Trump is trying to do it? Not quite. But do I think that we need to continue to push these bills and hopefully continue to build support? And then, we've got to work. The Republicans worked for a long time to get here. It didn't happen overnight, but it starts with us getting the majorities in the House and the Senate. And then after that, I think that we'll be able to do a lot in a few years, so long as we still have elections. All right, Kendall, go ahead. Sorry that was so long. Education is a lot.
Thanks, Congresswoman.
What's up, fam? Sorry for the delay. It's We-On-Loc Nation. Like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Like, share, and subscribe to the channel. We're just turning into Jazz McCrockett as she answers questions. If you want to answer questions, if you're connected to her, I think it's *3. *3. Give a call. It's *3. And answer any question you want. Y'all brutal in the chat.
They don't know, like, I was going to be an accountant. I was never going to be a lawyer, right? Like, so I graduated with a business degree thinking that I was going to go to grad school and become an accountant. I am a numbers person. And so right now, when I think about the fact that this is Trump's Supreme Court, that came down to the Senate itself. We know that all confirmations for a cabinet, as well as confirmations to the federal benches, they all go through the U.S. Senate. That is something completely different from what happens in the House. We don't deal with any confirmations whatsoever. So that's one part of it. In the House, I was one of 435. And so we built a consensus. You got to get over 217 to be able to get something passed. In the Senate, it's 100. And so your voting strength is that much more important and impactful. And the numbers are tight in the House, right? Like, the numbers are tight. The numbers are somewhat tight in the Senate as well. But we have to change. Like, if we continue to say, oh, well, we'll have, maybe this one battleground or that one battleground, and we may win one or whatever, we still will miss out on the things that we need. We run up against things such as the filibuster, which requires 60 a lot of times. So when I first went to DC as a state representative, we were going over voting rights. Nancy Pelosi passed the bills. Nothing happened in the Senate. We are living in the state in which Roe v. Wade was born out of. It was born out of my district in Dallas. Henry Wade was the elected prosecutor who was being sued in the Roe v. Wade case, right? Now it is that women don't have reproductive access. That's because Roe v. Wade was overturned. Well, we've got a bill for that in the House, but we don't have the numbers in the Senate. So every time I think about, like, the freedoms that we've lost, the things that we need to enshrine to make sure that we are protecting our democracy, we can have the numbers all day in the House. The House flip-flops a ton, but we've got to get this daggone Senate together. And that's where the real power lies. We've got a bill for everything you can think of. I don't know how many bills. I promise you, I am on, I think, 2,000 bills. It's something like that. I'm on a lot of bills. And it's great. And they're great ideas. Like, I got an idea for everything you can come up with, like, any given day of the week. But if we don't flip what's happening in Texas, none of it matters, because we just won't have the numbers. So this is more so about, am I going to keep up the same fight? Am I going to continue to push for the same types of legislation, things that I've already worked on, whether it's voting rights access, whether it's women's issues, whether it's educational issues, whether it's issues surrounding ICE and what's going on with them, whatever the small business issues, whatever the issues are that I've already been working on, I'll continue to work on those things. The difference is we may actually have an opportunity to pass them into law if we can actually get the numbers that we need on the Senate side.
Thanks, Congresswoman. Our next question comes from Deborah in Houston. She asked, what is your plan to reform the Supreme Court?
Oh, Miss Deborah. Woo! A woman after my heart. All right. So I currently serve on the Supreme Court Task Force in the House. Myself, Jamie Raskin, Hank Johnson, Madeline Dean, a number of us, we serve on this task force. And so there's like a group of 3 bills. And so the 3 bills are, number 1, to expand the court. Now, do I have any intentions of trying to expand the court while Trump is president? No. Resounding no. Sorry. Y'all on the phone couldn't see my face. So that's a no. But I do think that we need to do that for sure. And we need to do it when we have somebody who may not be experiencing the mental issues that this current president is experiencing. I think we need to bring balance back to the court. In addition to that, like some people try to act like it's such a radical idea. Let me tell you, it's not radical to expand the court. We have expanded the court 7 times in this country. We currently have 13 circuit courts, which are our appellate courts. And so at a very minimum, we need that number of justices to match up with the number of appellate courts. Additionally, the last time we expanded the court was 150 years ago. We have a few more people in this country, which means we have a few more cases, and the level of complexity that our cases now have is next level. I mean, 150 years ago, they didn't have a cell phone, they didn't have Zoom, they didn't have IG, they didn't have any of this, right? Like, just think about, like, you don't even have to go 150 years, right? To know that, like, things have become more complicated when it comes to kind of litigation. So we do need to expand the court. There is absolute, like, precedence for doing it, and that's it. We also need to go ahead and put term limits on it so that, and I think that's something that we should move forward with as soon as possible, and keep pushing. I don't know where Trump stands on term limits, but the term limits bill that we have is a reasonable amount of time. It's still a lot of time. It's 18 years. That means that we know that there will always be kind of like a continuous, like, change of the court, so that hopefully the court can keep up with who the people are at that time. And not have people that's been on the court forever and, you know, they still stuck in the 1920s, some of them. Okay. And then the last piece of legislation is around putting ethics on this court, which is something I talked about a little bit earlier. So those are my thoughts about the Supreme Court, but also because the Senate actually has oversight of the Supreme Court, I really want us in the majority, and I really want to bring them in. Y'all have seen me question and cross-examine, and as someone who has practiced both in state and federal courts, I'm not going to play with y'all. Like, I don't just have a law degree. I'm someone who has practiced. I am someone who is licensed in multiple states, and so you can't just, like, pull the wool over my eyes. So I do want to bring them in, but when you're in the minority, you're limited in deciding, like, what's on the agenda and that kind of stuff. And so I really do kind of want to lean in a little bit on our oversight duties as it relates specifically to the Supreme Court, and see what all we can explore, and see, you know, maybe as it relates to some of these cases that potentially are coming up before them, and really get them on the record to try to get them off the cases, recused, because they have certain biases.
Thanks, Congresswoman. So these next few questions, we're running a little long time, so we're going to squeeze in as many as possible.
All right, I'm gonna go fast.
This question comes from Sharon in Colleyville. She asked, could Congress pass emergency funding for PSA and essential workers if there is another government shutdown?
Yes, theoretically. If there's a shutdown, that's because we don't have an agreement. So that's going to be, you know, listen, let me explain it this way. So a continuing resolution is basically like a, I don't want to say it's an IOU. A continuing resolution, the best way I can describe it is it's kind of a, like, put it on layaway. Maybe that's a way to describe it. I don't really know how to describe it. But anyway, long story short, we can craft a continuing resolution to say whatever we wanted to say. And so, like, what has gotten us through as like bridges are these continuing resolutions. So this budget was supposed to be passed September 30th of last year. It didn't happen. And so then we had, a continuing resolution. Then we didn't. No, then we shut down. So we were supposed to have our budget passed by 9:30. Then we ended up shutting down. And then by the time we reopened with a continuing resolution because we did not have the 12 appropriations bills done. And as of now, only 6 out of those 12 have actually passed both chambers. I need to check to see if there's been an update today and see if any more have actually passed from the Senate. I don't think the other 5 of 6 are that controversial for the Senate. So I honestly wouldn't really anticipate that they wouldn't pass. It just depends on if they try to put them all together. So one thing people don't understand sometimes is that like they'll pile up like a bunch of bills together to try to like get them done. So, for instance, I know at least one of the recent appropriations we voted on, they put 2 of the bills together. So they may try to package all 6 so that they can get the support that they need on DHS, because then it's a matter of people saying, well, you're voting to shut down all these other divisions all over this one rogue like situation over here. So I don't know really how they're planning on addressing that currently on the Senate side. But technically in a continuing resolution, you can put anything you want to. So if they decided that they wanted to, say, propose an agreement that says, hey, TSA workers are going to get their money, they could. I mean, it just has to pass both chambers. They could do that if they wanted to, say that they're going to continue that funding and just have a partial of the other. It's not outside the realm. Now, do I think that that's likely? I don't know. I mean, it could be. Again, I think it's important that we all participate. So I think it's important that you make phone calls and advocate, on behalf of our hardworking TSA workers. Like, they are heroes. So it is important. So I would say call in and advocate. But I'm probably going to call a senator probably soon after we get off of this call, so I can just be updated on what's going on, because I've been traveling. For those of you that don't know, I'm headed to Dilley tomorrow, which is the detention facility that not only recently had a homicide, but it's also where the viral video of the children exists, that if you've seen it online. And it's also where our precious little 5-year-old was sent here recently. So I'm headed there. So I had to travel to San Antonio, which is closer to where Dilley is.
So Congresswoman, I'm going to try to do 3 more questions, but let's try to make the response as brief as possible. Next question comes from Wayne in Richmond, Texas. Are there yard signs available?
All right, well, that was an easy question. So thank you, Wayne. Yes, there are yard signs available. And if you go to our website, you can request one. But since you are in, you say Richardson?
Richmond, Texas.
Oh, Richmond, Texas. You can also call ours. Just sign up. Just sign up for a sign, and we'll see who's closest to you to get them.
Perfect. Next question comes from KD and Dick. Is there a better candidate, Paxton or Cornyn?
Better for who? I mean, let me say this. Both of them are terrible for all of us. I really don't know what to say. I will tell you that I have worked with John Cornyn. We have a bill that was signed into law by President Biden, the Grant Transparency Act. I will tell you that, prior to Trump coming back, I mean, he was a decent enough partner, right? Like, we worked on some fentanyl legislation I started working on when I was in the state house. And we came up with a federal kind of option for it. And he worked on that with me. We've worked on food security bills together. So I don't really feel like he's kind of fit that mode of, you're the devil because you're a Democrat. Like, because there are those that believe that that's what the D in Democrat stands for. I don't feel like he fits that mode. And it may be because at one point in time, he was a Democrat, right? He seemingly changed with the state to kind of stay in power. But he was elected as a Democrat before. So, I feel like he does not necessarily view Democrats as the devil. I don't really have much to say about Ken Paxton. I mean, he is a wannabe Trump, right? Like, this is a guy who had criminal charges that were pending forever, felony charges. And this is a guy who, is going to probably talk about the Bible over and over and over. And we know he had a lot of drama to the extent that he was impeached by Republicans. Now, he didn't get a conviction. And his wife has left him, and he's just a slime ball, right? And he doesn't have a moral compass, nor do I believe he has any respect for the people that he serves. I do think that the problem that we have right now is that both of them are leaning in as hard as possible to their service to Donald Trump. They are ignoring the 30 million people in this state. And so it's so frustrating as our farmers and ranchers are struggling, and ultimately it's causing all of us to struggle, as our small businesses are closing because of the tariff policies. Like, I don't know what all it will take or how bad it will have to get before people kind of say, you know what, I grew up as a Republican and it was a part of my identity, but right now that very party is gone and it's been co-opted, and it is, precluding me from being able to provide the future that I always thought I would be able to provide for my children. Or it's precluding me from being able to understand how I'm going to survive another day because I can't afford to have insurance or my hospital bill. So hopefully we can get people just having real talk. It is my hope to get to the general election and just to call them to the carpet on this stuff. I mean, they're going to try to spend as much time as they can, with distractions and things that have nothing to do with whether or not somebody can put food on the table, or roof over their head, or gas in their car, or, be able to send their kids to school. Like, they're not going to want to talk about that. And it's going to be really important that we remind people when they start talking about things that ain't got nothing to do with nothing, that, like, we are struggling and hurting. And it is Republican policies because the Republicans control the House, the Senate, as well as the governor's mansion in Texas. And they control the House, the Senate, as well as the White House in DC. If you are not happy with how things are going, the Republicans are the reason. Last question.
Perfect. And our last question, Congresswoman, comes from okay. So last question is around volunteer opportunities. Are there opportunities to volunteer with the campaign?
Yes. I love the easy questions. Please go sign up at jasmineforus.com. And, nothing is too small and nothing is too big. And we've got opportunities for everything. We got to do events. We got to have DJs. We've got to know what's going on in your community. So even if you just want to kind of keep us abreast of events that are going on that you feel like would be really impactful for us to attend, maybe even bring the bus out to. If you want to go and knock doors, if you want to sign up to make sure that you can get information out on social media, whatever it is that you feel like you can contribute, definitely go to jasmineforus.com. And Rachel, who is most likely listening in on this call, will be in touch with you and make sure that she gets you plugged in.
Perfect. And that concludes us. So if you want to give any final remarks, then we'll go from there.
Yeah. So I just wanted to make sure that we did this teletown hall, because if you don't live in my district, then you don't know that we do a quarterly teletown hall as me in my official capacity. I've always felt like it was important to consistently communicate and not come out and try to communicate with people only when you're trying to get their votes. And so we normally do a quarterly town hall, which is why we decided to go ahead and introduce those of you who are not Texas 30 to how we do things. So that is something that you could always look forward to in a Senator Crockett, is someone who will stay connected, keep you informed. And, sometimes you just got to have a teletown hall just real quick because something happened. I do think that information and education is our superpower in these moments of disinformation and flat out lies that come out of this administration and the propaganda. So I just wanted to let you know that we are those folk that will always stay connected. So I'm so excited that y'all could join us for our first teletown hall as it relates to the campaign. Hopefully we will get a couple more of these in. Not sure if that will be before or after the primary. But please feel free to sign up and feel free to send other questions to us. As y'all know, I do some of my Crockett confessionals. And so, depending on the question, it may be easy to incorporate your question into those. So thanks again. I appreciate you. Please stay safe. And especially those of you that have decided that it is imperative to make sure that you are fighting to show that our constitutional rights matter. Stay safe out there. As someone who was a civil rights lawyer that helped protesters to the extent that during George Floyd, we represented over 600 protesters pro bono. No one ended up with a conviction. I am so very committed to making sure that we are going about this the right way and we are minimizing any harm that can come to anyone. So please go, resist, fight, show them that we know what the First Amendment is all about, but just make sure you're safe. God bless you all. Have a good night.
Congresswoman, before we end, there's a couple of poll questions that we have for individuals on the call. So I'm just going to read them off. Individuals who are dialed in, you'll have an opportunity to engage before you hang up. So the first question that we have for you all is, who needs more information on voter registration before Monday, February 2nd deadline? Press 1 for yes on your phone. And we will follow up with you and provide you with a direct link of where to go and provide your information so that you can print out and mail your voter registration form in. So again, if you need more information regarding voter registration, again, that deadline is Monday, February 2nd. You can do so by tapping 1 on your phone keypad. You can also be $25. This is a grassroots campaign, and so we invite you to participate in that form of support if you're able. You can do that also by visiting jc4tx.com/donate. And then again, for any information around our weather conditions that are happening across the state, you can visit jc4tx.com/weather for for various updates around the weather and what resources are available. So again, we appreciate you all. And
you know what, Kendall? Let me just say this too. Sorry, y'all. One last thing. Sorry for everybody online. My laptop died. My bad.
Live event has ended.
Oh, well, I'm gonna just say it on mine. I just wanted to make sure that y'all knew that yes, we are going to be in Dilley on tomorrow, and then we'll be in San Antonio, and then we are going to end up being in Austin for a second, and then we're headed down to McAllen, and then we're headed to Houston. So please check us out. We in these Texas streets slipping and sliding, but we are pulling up. So I appreciate y'all so very much. I apologize again that my laptop died, and I didn't see that was coming. This new update has me a little thrown off. But anyway, I will talk